Hello everybody, this is Connor, BoatsDon'tSink, here with another Vice Schwartz deck profile. This time we're going to be looking at another Lycoris Recoil deck, this time the 8 choice deck, or however many more choices you want to put into it. This is a super cool deck, similar to like the 20 choice Tokyo Revengers decks. And there's a couple other series now that have ways to put climax triggers on some of their characters, get extra resources that way. This is one of them. It's super cool. You can play up to 24 choice. We're not going to have that many, but we'll take a look at that once we get there. As usual, before we get into the deck, just a reminder, this is meant to be mostly a starting point to work off of. This is definitely not optimized for any meta. So play around with it yourself, figure out which options you like, maybe change some stuff around so that it fits your personal preferences. Looking at the list here, we've got a lot of yellow. Unfortunately, this deck doesn't have as many slots as I would like it to. I kept hitting like 54, 56 cards trying to fit everything. But because we have to have such a big package around both our level 1 and 3 combos, it does get a little hard to fit stuff. But everything in here is at least serving some purpose or another for the most part, so hard to really figure out which ones are going to be best in the long run. Definitely something to play around with, sort of figure out which cards you like more, change them around that way. I think there's a lot of room to explore in this deck. We have a lot of different options, and even with different climaxes, using this same strategy that we'll look at the end here. But lots of 4-ofs that are mostly because we have to play 4 of them. You can check out the deck log page using the code at the bottom right, 77C3J. Let's jump into the individual cards here. So we've got a pretty normal level spread, actually, despite how much we kind of have to warp this deck around our specific combos. 18 zeros, 12 ones, 4 twos, 8 threes. We do have an overwhelming amount of yellow, 35 yellow cards, because everything that's part of both of our packages is yellow. It's very hard to turn this into a 3-color deck at any point, just because you have to have so many yellow cards. We've done our best to fit enough blue for our level 1 event here, but even that 12 blue for a card that we want to be playing at level 1 if we need it is a little sketchy. 38 characters, 4 events, 8 climaxes, obviously. We have 17 soul triggers, which for an 8-choice deck would be fine. For a deck where we're effectively playing 19 choice triggers, I wish we could fit a little more. Maybe you could cut down to 3 copies of the event and try to fit another one somewhere, but it does get kind of hard to fit more, since a lot of the cards that we have to play 4 of here, or at least have to play a good chunk of, don't have soul triggers. The first of which is going to be our Drunk Waitress Mizuki. So we talked about this card in the Gate Comeback deck a little bit. We weren't playing it there. Here we're playing 4. On play from hand, give a character in your opponent's center stage minus 1,000 power until end of turn. This is pretty decent for popping like JCs and stuff on your opponent's board that are very small utility cards. Some runners are really small. This just gives you a way to clear them off. Otherwise, even if they have a bigger character, you can maybe minus 1k it so that one of your other characters can actually beat over it. Second effect is on placement from stage 2 waiting room. You can discard 1, check top 4, add a level 1 or higher card, reveal it, put it in hand, put the rest in waiting room. This adding cards is actually pretty good in this deck compared to the other one, since we do have the events. If we need the events, which we'll look at the end, we're gonna need them at level 1. And this being able to find them early is actually really helpful in that. It's also one of our only ways to dig for our level 1 combo, since the set as a whole, Lycoris Recoil, doesn't have a lot of great deck search. This is one of our only ways to really find our level 1 combo consistently, and we're going to have to lean into that pretty hard. This card does also interact with our level 1 combo. Our level 1 combo, if it wasn't obvious sort of from the lead up to the deck, it's similar, as I mentioned, to the Tokyo Revengers one, where it's going to be giving a list of characters choice trigger icons in all zones, which means that when you do this level 1 combo, it's not going to do anything on its own, but if you trigger any of these cards listed, they're going to have choice triggers, and you're going to get to resolve them as such, which is how we're going to be generating our card advantage and stock. Drunk Waitress Mizuki is the first of those cards that's going to be getting choice trigger, which is why we need to play 4 of it. Next card, we have 4 copies of Walnut's Identity Kurumi. This is our Brainstorm. We played this in the last deck. It's just generic, overall super good card. When we play a climax, look at top 2 of the opponent's deck, put them on top in any order. Unlike our last deck, this isn't really going to have any particular synergy with our finisher. However, it is still good throughout the game, just to sort of make sure our opponent is maybe canceling our first attack on 1 instead of 2, kind of making their cancels less optimal when they do have them, or knowing when we can side for precise damage, etc. Second effect is the Brainstorm effect. Pay 1, rest itself. Brainstorm 4 for each climax. Return a LycoReco or weapon character from your waiting room to your hand. We're probably going to be mashing this a lot in the deck, since we are going to probably need it for card advantage. Thankfully, with a billion choice triggers, we do have hopefully enough stock that mashing this doesn't become a problem. But just like our Mizuki level 0, we're playing 4 of this because it gains choice trigger. So that kind of works out pretty well for us, I think, because we want to find this early and get one into our back row. So playing 4 helps us do that, and the extra copies still have good use since we're going to be able to trigger them and get value. Overall, again, just good card. We only need these 8 yellow cards at level 0 because we're not really... That's actually more than enough. We don't want to level any of our choice triggers, really, and we have specific cards that we need in level, so not worried about getting a lot of a yellow at 0. Yep. Next card, this is a card that you'd pretty much only... Well, I say only play in this deck. The standby deck plays this card too. This is a pretty neat card. At the old radio tower, once more, Chisato 001K. On play from hand, reveal top card of deck. If it's an event or a LycoReco or a weapon character, put it in hand, discard 1. This is good for just, you know, filtering extra climaxes out of hand, filtering cards we don't need out of hand. Top check add is pretty just generically good. And we do have events in this deck that is going to be able to help us dig to, so, you know, great effect there. It's not why we're playing it, but just good text to have on a card. The main effect that we are playing this for is the second one. On play from hand, you can return 2 characters from your waiting room to your deck and shuffle. If you do, this gets +1 soul. So we very often see this profile in the decks that are able to put extra trigger effects on their characters. Obviously, like the 12 standby Nino decks in quintuplets play this. Play like shuffle back effects so they can get their Ninos back into a small deck state. We're going to do the same thing here. Any of our characters that can get choice icons, if we can just shuffle them back into our deck, get extra soul by doing so. It's going to help us trigger those choice icons more often, get more value out of them. It also works decently well with our finisher. Since our climax combo itself isn't a finisher, we're just playing Musashis as sort of off finishers to close out the game. And at the end of the game, this is going to let us shuffle back, you know, like extra level 2s and 3s to make our Musashis a little more threatening, more likely to deal good chunks of damage that we need. So good throughout the game. We only play 2 because you don't want to draw this a ton. It's really only good on those specific turns and doesn't generate us any kind of advantage otherwise. We play 4 copies of Chosen Place of Belonging Takina. We're not playing the early play that goes with it like we were in the other build, but this is pretty much our only plussing level 0. During your turn, if all your characters are LycoReco or weapon, this gets plus 2,000 power. So 4k offense at level 0 is great. It's going to run over pretty much anything our opponent plays. Second effect, when your other LycoReco or weapon character is frontal attacked, you may pay the cost. If you do, return that character to your hand. To pay 1, send it to waiting room. So very typical JC effect. This is the majority of our blue color fix. It's half of our blue characters. But also, it's our only plussing level 0, so this card is super important to get to and mulligan to. And just have around if you want to be any kind of aggressive at level 0. Otherwise, you're probably going to be playing a very slow level 0 game. It's great with the, you know, Brainstorm with the Mizuki on play, give something -1k. Since we don't need to get any sort of reverses with our stuff, we can just use this high power with any of our other cards that give like minus power, or can just bottom deck stuff, clear out our opponent's level 0 lanes pretty easily. There's also some like really interesting ways you can try field with the next card we'll look at. You can bottom deck if your opponent only has one character. So being able to like Mizuki minus 1k pop something and then play Takina, bottom deck their other because you got rid of their second character. And then play this, and you can just get card advantage back and be very aggressive, attack 3 times. But without this card, you're just not going to be able to do that. This kind of enables a lot of our aggressive level 0 plays. It's also really good with our level 1 combo, since our level 1 combo has power on offense, but it's only 3k on defense. Playing this alongside it is going to give us a way to bounce it back to hand, generate card advantage that way, which can kind of take advantage of a lot of the stock that we're able to build off of the choice triggers. And just let us hopefully go for like second combo turn or anything like that. Or just have extra cards, really, is value in general. The Encouraging Takina is the next card I was talking about. We're playing 2 copies. 0015, on play from hand, if your opponent has 1 or less character in center stage, you can choose a cost 0 or lower in their center stage, put it at the bottom of their deck. This is really great against decks that, well, A, it's just really great going second, because your opponent's probably only playing 1 character. You can just bottom deck it immediately. Really good against characters that have on-death effect, so whether it's like the Aqua from Hololive, or the Mizuki in this deck even, any of those on-death effects or on-reverse effects, you can just send straight to the bottom, get rid of them, not have to worry about them. And we're fine playing this card, because it's also a climax swap. Normally you probably wouldn't play a card just for that bottom deck effect, but when it's stapled onto an effect you want anyway, hooray. So on play from hand, you can pay 1, discard a climax, choose a climax in waiting room, return it to hand. We would like to play the costless, like sack character Mizuki climax swap that we had in the other list, but unfortunately we just need enough blue that I'd rather play 2 of this. The stock cost is a little awkward because we're going to see our sort of like mid game is very stock heavy. So having to pay a stock to climax swap can get a little awkward at some points. But our level 3 combo is one that we want to loop across multiple turns, and having climax swaps to enable that is better than not having them. It also just makes sure we can hopefully get our correct climax for level 1 combo. Last level 0 we have is first Lycoris Fuki. When your character direct attacks, choose a character in your opponent's center stage. That character gets a minus 1,000 power until end turn. Just more ways to help clear out our opponent's board. Lots of just disruption at level 0 that's hopefully going to, you know, help us build enough advantage to sort of carry into the mid game. Act, put this into your clock, look at up to 4 cards from top of your deck. Choose up to 1 LRC or weapon character from among them, reveal it to your opponent, put it into your hand, and put the rest into your waiting room. So this card can send itself straight to clock from stage, which is a way to guarantee that we have blue during the main phase, which means that this card is actually a really good JC target at level 0. If you're able to play this and play JC, attack twice, and then bounce this back to hand. If your opponent attacks it, then you can just play it back down, send it to clock the next turn to guarantee blue and just find another character, dig toward your level 1 combo, anything like that. Overall, just good card for sort of deck speed, finding pieces that we need after it's sort of served its purpose. And it's blue for color fix, which is absolutely something we need. We'll see why that's so important later. We have a specific experience target we need for our level 1 combo, which means that if we miss it, it's just the whole game's over. Moving into level 1s, we have 3 copies of Cafe LycoReco Chisato. This is a 103k. During your turn, it gains 3k, so it's 6k offense, 7k if we play a climax. On attack, you can pay 1 to trigger check 2 times. Typically, I would definitely not play a card like this just because it doesn't really generate enough value on its own. But when we have 19 choice triggers, Twin Driving gives us a really good chance of hitting them, which generates advantage on its own. This is also the 3rd card we play that gains a choice trigger off of our level 1 combo, which it's kind of unfortunate that we want this on stage and we want it in deck to be a choice trigger, but we just kind of have to deal with that. You could play 4 copies of this if you want. I cut down to 3 just to fit some of the extra zeros and soul triggers. It's, like I said, a little hard to fit everything we really want in this deck, but 4 of this wouldn't be terrible just to have more choice triggers. Looking at our level 1 combo itself, Shrewd Accountant Takina 103k Soul Trigger. During your turn, gets 1000 power for each of your other LycoReco or weapon characters. So on a full board, this will be 7k, 8k with Climax. So really big, but tiny on defense. That's why I mentioned having the JC as like a third lane. If you play like 2 of these, third lane JC means you're going to be able to generate a little bit of card advantage back, save one of your Takinas, because they're definitely not living on defense otherwise. Climax combo experience. So if the Climax Business Crisis for Cafe LycoReco, which is the choice, is in your Climax area, this card is in your center stage, Time for Work, Chisato, and Takina is in your level, and you have another LycoReco or weapon character. It's a bajillion requirements on this card, and we need the 3-2 combo in our level, which is a little awkward. We have to get it there very quickly. All of your other Drunk Waitress Mizuki, Walnut's Identity Kurumi, Cafe LycoReco Chisato, and Cafe LycoReco Mika in all of your zones get choice in the trigger icon. A lot of words, a lot of card names. So first part of this, like I said, you need the level 3 in your level for this to work. You have exactly like 2 turns probably to get it into your clock so you can level it. That's why we're playing the blue event. The blue event has a level swap effect tied to it, so that's going to help us put this in our level if we don't find it in time. We get a little extra time to sort of dig for it. And that's just absolutely critical to this deck working. The 4 cards that are gaining choice triggers, 3 of them we've already looked at, we're playing. We're not actually playing the Cafe LycoReco Mika, just because the deck space is way too tight, and it's just not a good enough card in my opinion. It's on play from hand. Your opponent declares 0, 1, 2, or 3. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it is a character of the level your opponent declared, put it on any position of your stage. Realistically, your opponent should just always declare 0, because if they declare anything else, you get a free like higher level card. You're just so far ahead. And if you get a 0 off of it, it is card advantage, but it's very inconsistent. He's only 500 power. And then during his battle, if you cancel, he can go to your stock. Which again is like a little bit of advantage, but it's just not good enough compared to the other options we have. It's not really progressing our game plan enough. I really wish they put it on just like some other better card, or even just the level 1 combo itself, so like any extra copies are choice triggers. But unfortunately, he is definitely the weakest of the bunch, so he gets cut out here. If you do play 4 of all these, you get to the 24 choice triggers, which is kind of cool, but not good enough for us. Last level 1 we play is 1 copy of Sudden Shot Takina. This is just an anti-change stock bomb. I think these are pretty decent into the field as a whole. Any deck that plays early plays is not going to want to deal with this. But if you want extra room for kind of anything else, preferably you would only replace this with another Soul Trigger, because it is keeping our Soul Trigger count reasonably decent for how many choice triggers we have. But you could cut this for like another 0 or the 4th Chisato Twin Drive if you really want. I'd probably, if I cut this, cut it for the next card we're going to look at, the 4th copy of the 2-1 Takina. But otherwise, this card's fine. It's just a 1 of to have an anti-change bomb. So the 2-1 Takina, this is very important to our game plan. 2-1 1500. It has 3 effects that are basically all revolving around our level 3. So the first one is all of your copies of Time for Work, Chisato, and Takina get plus 500 power and cannot be chosen by your opponent's effects. So this is our main form of protection for them. It's how we're going to keep this card actually like on the board, sticking around, and not just get bounced back to our hand, or like anti-changed or anything like that. It's a 1500 assist to all LycoReco or weapon characters in front of it, which means even if you're having to play more copies of your level 1 combo in front of it for a turn, they're going to be enormous, which is great. And obviously it's making our 3-2s just huge. The 3-2 itself is 11-5, so between the first and second effects on this card, it's going to be 13-5 cross turn, and can't be chosen by effects, which is just really good power line, really strong. Even the slime decks with Miron have to play a climax to tie that. And if we climax combo, we gain even more cross-turn power. So we're really beating over pretty much every deck in the format here, in terms of just power at level 2. Third effect is how we're doing this at level 2. Act, pay 3, rest this card. Choose up to 1 time for work Chisato and Takina in your hand and put it on any position of your stage. So it is going to require us to find both the 2-1 and the 3-2 into our hand. It's going to require 4 stock to get both of these down. But once they're down, they're price sticking, and you can just use that again on each turn to start building a board of these 3-2s. And it's pretty hard to deal with, especially when we look at the climax combo they're going to have for just even more obnoxious disruption of our opponent. This is, again, we're playing 3 because you do need to find it. Sometimes you want to find a second one, but I do think you just want the brainstorm in your back row. But any extra copies past the one that you get on board are good fodder to throw in stock off of your choice triggers that you hit. So having a 4th one could just make it even easier to find the first copy, and you can just throw them in stock. So that's probably why I'd pick the 4th copy of this over the anti-change bomb if you want to get rid of the anti-change bomb. Our last level 2 is a memory kick backup. So 2-1-3K backup. When you use the backup effect, choose your character in battle. It gains when this card's battle opponent becomes reversed, put that character into your opponent's memory. Good against decks with Encore, good against decks with end of attack effects. Otherwise, it's just a 3K backup. I'm pretty sure the biggest level 2 backup we have access to in this deck, the biggest one that has a soul trigger. The biggest backup in the set that has a soul trigger. So we can grab it off of our choice triggers and use it for just additional protection against maybe any like burst power stuff or any of the characters that just like gain 6K when they attack level 3s. Things like that could potentially still get big enough to reverse our level 3 combo, so a little bit of extra protection for that. And looking at our level 3 combo itself, as I said, it's a 3-2-11-5 if you have 2 or more other characters from gaining 3K. It heals on play, which that is going to activate when we play it off of the 2-1 Takina as well. And climax combo, at the end of this card's attack, if whatever your order is, leave it all up to us, is in your climax area, that's the other choice we play, and you have 2 or more other characters, you can pay 2. If you do, this gets plus 2,000 power and the following ability until end of your opponent's next turn. The ability it gains is continuous. The character facing this card gets minus 3 soul. So since the Chisato and Takina itself is gaining the effect, and it's not choosing, it's just continuous, it will get around hexproof boards our opponent can make. So this is still going to slow slime down a lot, anything like that. There's basically no way your opponent can stop this unless they can remove the 2-1 assist from board first that's giving this hexproof, and then also still remove this from board, which it's doable. There are decks that have the tools, but not many of them, and it's pretty hard for them to do a lot of the time. So these are price sticking. Biggest issue with the combo is just that it costs 2 stock. If you have multiple copies of this out and you want to use multiple of the combo, you're spending more stock each turn cycle than you're generating by attacking. So you need to be hitting choice triggers or something like every turn to keep enough stock, or otherwise you're just slowly sort of like grinding through the resources that you hopefully generated at level 1 and hoping to keep up with them. But the main goal of this card is to come down, be almost impossible to deal with. Even if you don't combo the first one you play, it's just super hard to deal with. It heals. And on the following turn, if you can like combo the second turn or whatever, hopefully open up enough of a damage gap from sort of like blanking a couple of your opponent's lanes that you can finish off your opponent while staying out of their kill range. That's kind of the whole goal with it. You're definitely not looping this forever. You're kind of just trying to open up enough of a gap that you can close the game from a safe range. And unfortunately, it doesn't have any finisher power of its own, so we do have to get that gap in order to actually be able to close out the game, which is one of the downsides of this deck. The first card we're going to play at level 3, Cafe LycoReco Kurumi, 3-2-11K, on play from hand, choose one of the following. Option 1, your opponent returns all cards from their stock to their deck, shuffles, puts the same number of cards in the top of their deck into their stock. Option 2, you may choose one of your opponent's characters and return it to their hand. So option 1 is mainly what this is here for. Since the combo we're playing, it's very big, which means we're going to be opening up direct attack lanes probably. And if we're playing climaxes, we're swinging for like minimum 4. Any deck that gets kind of reasonably compressed is basically going to be impossible for us to kill with vanilla swings. So having some form of stock swap to keep them decompressed is really our only hope of getting enough damage through to win a game against those sort of like compression decks. Any other decks, hopefully we're making them spend enough resources to keep playing out new boards that we're able to keep them from getting like super compressed. But decks like Slime are going to be pretty rough without a card like this. The bounce effect, again, probably not going to matter because we are big on board anyway, so our opponent's probably just having to crash into us every turn. But if there is like some sort of counter step that you're worried about, you can use it to bounce their character to deny counter step. Our only off finisher that we're playing, 3 copies of Let's Game, Kurumi, and Chisato. 3/2 10k. On play from hand, if you have 4 or more other characters, you can choose a character in your waiting room and put it into your stock. So this could come down for only 1 stock, which is pretty good, because as I said, our level 3 combo is quite expensive. We're not really going to have resources for like a big finish anyway. So this being able to only come down for 1 stock is pretty solid. Once per turn, during the turn that this is placed on stage from hand, when damage dealt by this card is cancelled, put the top card of your deck into waiting room, deal X. X is the level of that card plus 1. Pretty typical Musashi effect. This card is actually a like complete clone of a card from Bofuri that sort of saw play as an off finisher there. The nice thing about this in this deck is because we're so big on board and probably winning board, that when we do decide to go for our finisher turn, it's quite possible that we'll already have enough characters on board for all of the copies of this that we play to come down for 1 stock. Because say you have like 2 copies of your combo live and a back row, you can play this into the open lane, get a stock back, and then play another copy just like over something, and get another stock back off that. So pretty good at just like coming down for really cheap. Since we are trying to open up a big gap and kind of kill our opponent from a, you know, hopefully they're like mid 3, maybe low 3, and we're trying to like open up that gap and just sort of chip them away. Having cancel burns here is really good. We're never going for like Hail Mary turns to just like kill our opponent from level 2. So cancel burns good at just sort of chipping away at them. Yeah, just kind of good off finisher. It fits in with what the deck's trying to do really well, despite not being like super powerful on its own. Alright, the event. This card that we have to fit 12 blue for. This is a 1/0 event. You have to have a Lycoris weapon character to play it. It's just look at top 4, choose a character, reveal it, put it in hand, put the rest in waiting room. Very typical, like, standard event profile that you see in a lot of sets. However, the important part here, you can choose a card in your level and a card in your waiting room and exchange them. This is basically the only way we can guarantee that the 3/2 gets into our level for a level 1 combo, and if we don't get the 3/2 in level, our level 1 combo does nothing. It's all useless. It's Jover. Game's done if we don't get that. So that's why we're playing 4. It's why we're splashing blue. But I do think this event has good utility otherwise. It does give us a costless way to control our deck size, which obviously is good in any deck. It's also a costless way to find our level 1 combo in a deck with like no search. And it's a way to put soul triggers in our waiting room for our choice triggers. But it's also a way to keep our deck down to a small size on our combo turns so that our shuffle back can shuffle back potential choice triggers and get us a lot of like consistent ways to trigger those choice triggers. The other thing, I don't think I mentioned this when I talked about the level 1 combo itself, but shuffling back those choice triggers can really swing you just a ton of card advantage, especially say you can get down to like a 2 or 3 card deck, shuffle back 2 of them. The Takina stacks. So if you have 2 copies of the Takina 1/0 on your board, they're all going to be giving all of those characters they list choice trigger. So if you have 2 Takinas and you trigger the Kurumi Brainstorm, its trigger is choice, which means you're going to get to stock or add to hand or any combination 2 soul triggers from your waiting room. So this can mean that like getting into a good deck state where you can shuffle back choice triggers to hit multiple in a turn could potentially be like 4 or 6 extra cards that you get either in hand or stock all at once. Which is why being able to control your deck state here to sort of put yourself in those ideal situations is so important. Also, it obviously can just like get us out of bad deck states if we see too many climaxes early, like anything that Mill is going to do otherwise. So I do think this card is worth splashing blue for, even outside of making sure our level 1 combo actually works. Climaxes we have, obviously, the choice climax for our level 1 combo, and the choice climax for our level 3 combo, just running 4 of each. However, I don't think this deck has to run 4 of each, and we'll look at that in a second as well. So, deck as a whole, some of the pros of the deck, we can potentially generate, like, huge resource pools with 19 choice triggers. Like I said, since the Takinas stack at level 1, if you have multiples, sometimes you just trigger, like, 6 choice triggers in a turn and get a million stock in hand, which is really cool. As long as you have good things to do with it, which I think this deck does, even if you're just, like, brainstorming or spending it on dumping a billion 3/2s in play. And the level 2 game is very large and very hard to interact with. Because it's hexproof, which is something you don't see on level 2 games a lot, it's just super resilient and doesn't lose to a lot of the ways that decks have to answer level 2 boards. It's similar to why Slime is so good right now. It's just very hard to interact with their board. And this is even bigger character-wise, just doesn't generate as many resources. But we're doing that at level 1, right? Cons of the deck, our card advantage is inconsistent. Despite the fact that we can generate a ton, we could also, you know, play double Takina combo and just not trigger a choice. And at that point, we're in rough shape. So that's the biggest downside of this deck. It's why it's not really competitive. It's more just a fun, you know, LycoReco Cafe theme deck. It's very all-in on the level 2 game. If you're not sticking the 3/2s, you're not doing anything, really. So that's an issue of the deck as well. Or if your opponent has a way to answer the 3/2s, things can go downhill pretty quickly. So this is very all-in on, like, get the Takinas, trigger choice, get the early plays out, and you are really hoping nothing goes wrong there. And you have relatively weak ways to close out the game. Like I said, we're trying to open up that gap and just get, like, damage confirmation through cancel burns. We don't have good ways to just sort of blow up our opponent. So, very fatal flaws in the deck that can hold it back from being top tier, but they don't stop it from being super fun to play. When it works great. And does some really cool stuff, and lets you play all these cool Cafe LycoReco cards. Now, some other options that the deck can have and play. If you somehow either can figure out a way to fit red, or if you just don't want to play the blue event and think you can always get your 3/2 in level without it, you can play this event instead. Proof of Allen Children is a red event. It's 1/1. Search your deck for a climax. Reveal it to your opponent, put it in your hand, and shuffle. Put this card into your memory. This means that you can just loop whatever combo you want, like, every turn that you find this event. If you either find the climax or the event. There is a blue level 0 that can check top 3 to find events. I have seen some lists play this event and the blue event, but obviously you have to make concessions cutting something else somewhere to fit both events. And you can use the blue level 0, check top 3, find an event, just keep sort of looping this, getting your climax over and over again. Which, whether you want to use that to loop the 1/0 or loop the 3/2s minus soul effect, either one's fine. It's cool at doing both. It does also open up access to a different off finisher. The trial deck level 3 on attack can send this from memory back to your waiting room to put a card from your opponent's waiting room on top of their deck. It's not a ton of damage, but it is, like, helps you, again, close out games that you've already got your opponent pretty close to dead. Now, looking at some of the other climaxes we can play, you can play standby with this instead of the choice level 1 combo. Which, if you can standby out... so, what's funny, this is actually the same as, like, you're playing more than 4 standby despite only having 4 standby. The climax combo for this gains standby icon if the climax is in play. So you can still use, like, the shuffle back to try to set up deck states where you hit multiple standby despite not having the climaxes in deck. But the reason you'd want to play standby is to put out the 2/1 Takina assist at level 1. Because if you cancel and stay at level 1, there's no level restriction on the act ability to put the 3/2 in play. Which means you can pay 3, rest the 2/1, and put the 3/2 healer down at level 1, and just have a 13/5 hexproof dude at level 1. Which is really cool, can snowball really hard, makes it even harder to answer early. And if you trigger standbys at level 2, you can get extra copies of the 3-2 out for free, which you don't heal, but you can just keep massive boards that let you spend your stock on comboing and getting minus soul instead of having to spend it to try to get them into play in the first place, since it is pretty expensive to get those 3-2s down. So this is one way you could take the deck. It's another way that I see it fairly often. The other way is, instead of cutting the level 1 combo, you can cut down on the level 3 combo, either entirely or cutting like 2 of its climax for 2 of this, and playing like a split top end. This gives you a way to actually close out the game with a good finisher. Oozing Bloodthirst Takina is a 3-2 10k climax combo with a stock soul. On attack, pay 3, discard 2 characters, deal 3, deal 3. So this is good with the level 1 combo being able to generate a lot of stock for us. If you just want to go all in on that and trying to loop that instead of building a big board at level 2, you can play the Cafe LycoReco package to just build a bunch of stock, build a bunch of hand with all the choice triggers, and then use all those resources to kill your opponent instead of try to play a grindy stall game at level 2. So a lot of ways you can take this deck, a lot of ways you can sort of change it up with different combos. So I do like that about it, that it has a lot of different options for you to try outside of sort of the color by numbers 8+ choice deck. But the 8 choice deck is sort of the obvious themed deck that the set pushes, for these cards at least. So that's the one I wanted to talk about in specific. Here's the full list. Again, you can check out the deck log code at 77C3J. That'll be in the description as well. Thank you for watching, as always. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what other decks you want to see. I don't know how many more I'll be doing for Lycoris Recoil unless people ask for specific decks. So otherwise, there might just be a couple random Weiss deck profiles until we get the next set this month. That's going to be Sayakano Finale. Otherwise, there should be some videos on the screen that you can watch now until I get more videos out. And we'll see you next time.